Okay, so we're here in my 2012 Jayco Eagle Outback, and I've decided to remove my three-way fridge and install a compressor fridge. Now, most would be aware that the most common fridges to put in would be a Bushman 130, or DX 130 I think it is, or the Dometic Jayco CRX or CX 110. I've gone with the 110 because I saw the read up, I suppose, on the 35 best caravan mods or whatever it is for the Jaycos. Saw the very detailed description about the Bushman install, and there was a mention in there about having to remove some trimming and cutting it down. And I thought that it might have just been unique to the Bushman. So I decided to go the Jayco, the Dometic Jayco CRX 110. Thinking that, and I've heard that it was a direct slot in. I have removed the old fridge, which actually was quite easy. The fascia panels either side of the fridge, about 3 screws each side, which means you have to remove the door to get to the left-hand side where the door hinge is. At the back of the fridge is 2 screws that were securing the back of the back plates to the floor. And then there was the gas fitting and the 12-volt lines there. The 240-volt line was going through that hole, and it was sealed up via a bit of expander foam, which I just simply dug out. You can see, you might be able to see where the holes were. I think there's one there and one there, the 2 screws at the rear, and the front screws at the front were through this panel here and that side there, and it slid out, no worries. Okay, now getting the new one in I thought would be easy, but what I found is it is slightly wider, and this trimming here is actually too wide or interferes with the space. So you need to remove this and trim it down just like the Bushman. So if you're thinking that the Dometic Jayco is going to save you, it's not. To get this off there's a bunch of these angled brackets on the back side, on the inside of the panel. There's obviously 4 screws per block, and I thought I could get away with just moving 2 per block. You actually can. The screws that then hold this in are on the back side of these blocks here. You can see there's actually 2 behind there on an angle, 2 behind there on an angle, 2 behind there on an angle, 2 behind there on an angle. So the 8 screws on an angle, and then the panel is then held in by staples from the rear. So in order to get the flex in the panel, I also had to remove some screws off the bottom, and you could go further by removing further bracketry behind here. I just moved those 2. That paneling actually is moving enough for me to get in there. Now it's a matter of undoing the staples from the backside through the gap I've created, and then I can take this panel off and trim it to size. Okay, so I've now got the panel off. A whole bunch of staples are on the backside. Some of them are still in the cross supports for the drawers, and you can see there the screw holes for those cross supports there. You can see also that this extension panel is just stapled on, but it is stapled top and bottom, so you cannot remove this, just the extension panel, without removing that, unless you really savagely rip at those staples. Now I created more gap there. I will place the fridge in, check the gap, cut this piece to size, reinstall it all at the appropriate size, and I'll make sure that I'll cross-check that with the standard dressing kit that I got with the CRX 110, and we'll go from there. Okay, so those of you who might have already guessed, I'm sort of doing this video as I go and discover stuff. So I've managed to remove that piece, the V piece there. That was essentially joined together with that piece. That foam, you can tell that was against the previous fridge trimming. They're the screws there from the existing cross members. I've separated those two pieces. I've then I've switched the door around. Now it's interesting to note, do that before you put the thing in the van, or you have to sort of put it on a weird angle to try and get to the bottom hinge, which you have to go from underneath. And if you're in a high humidity situation, tropical Queensland or something like that, there's a drain on the bottom that's optional. Highly recommended for high humidity situations that you'd want to fit outside the van, lying the thing down. Anyway, I've switched the door over. It now opens the same way as the standard fridge, and I've fitted the standard trimming kit. You can see it's going to just sit pretty much where the last trimming kit sat. Now there's 25mm essentially, whereas this previous trim is roughly 40 at a guess, probably 45. I'll get the measuring tape out. Yep, 40mm. So you could cut that down and then re-stitch on the previous piece to space it out, wherever I've put that piece now. Funny enough, oh, there it is there. Funny enough, this piece here was actually midway back along the old fridge as a bit of a spacer / support. Now, funny enough, that piece happens to be 25mm. So that will work perfectly for me in there. So I'm about to utilize that piece, confirm that I can mount it onto there. I might mount it, rather than using staples, I'll probably use screws from the backside and see how I go mounting that. Okay, so I used that spacer piece that I found inside. It's worked out really well depth wise. The piece that came along here originally was the right length, but there's not enough gap between this drawer and the fridge in order to place it, unless you shaved it really thin. I might try and shave that thin at some stage, and just for a dress-up panel, especially since there's a bit of a gap there, or I'll work out either cutting that and filling that with a space plate, sorry. But at this stage, it's not too unattractive. Just by cutting that and even expander foaming it, I think it'll look quite fine. I have already put screws on this side. I'll obviously put some screws in the top there, if nothing else, but to dress it up. But and the door panels, these I'll put back on. I could have left that door on, but it was just so I could access these screws. It wouldn't have really mattered leaving that on, but definitely was easy to take it off and make my job just a little bit easier. Now on to wiring and potentially screwing and mounting the rear. Alright, just a closing video on the install. Like I said, there is plenty of information on this in a very detailed write-up, which is accessible through the best, I think it's 35 or 37 best caravan mods or Jayco mods. That write-up is very detailed. I just knew that, a picture or a video just paints a better picture sometimes. It is installed. The one thing I suppose that I am not sure about, I will have to just address the gap that is here. Whether I put a panel, address panel on there, the same color as the fridge, yet to be determined. I am debating whether I needed the standard trim kit. There is about, I suppose, a 10mm gap between the top here and the top panel of the kitchenette. You can potentially fill that with a strip of foam, and this side strip, again, there are means to actually secure the fridge inside through these screws here. I would not recommend it on that side due to the electronics. However, I have definitely done it on that side. So my fridge is currently being secured by those 3 screws and the 2 screws on that side. It seems very firm. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And when I do shake it, even from the rear of the fridge, the van shakes, not the fridge. So it's reassuring. I have wired it up, of course, via the recommended fuse, 15 amps from the batteries, independently from the J-Hub systems or whatever you've got running a lot of your accessories. I've got it straight off the battery via that black switch there, just above my normal battery switch. The reason for that is my intent is to be able to turn the fridge on and run it without it being connected to the car. And I know that the J-Hub, or whatever they are called, the internal management system of these vans run only when the car is running. And of course I've got my C-Tech and solar system, so I expect that, you know, it'll run off the battery, charge up on the car and the solar. And I'd like to get the fridge down to temperature and even loaded the day before I go camping. Because my top doesn't vent up, there shouldn't be any issues with it venting towards the roof. All vents out. Anyway, I'll put in the comments later on how it goes on the first trip. Hopefully I haven't waffled on too much, and hopefully at least something of these videos has been helpful to someone else doing the same install. Cheers.